The first reading today teach us about or speak us about the teaching of a wise man in Jerusalem around 180 years before Christ. This wise man, close to the temple, close to the liturgy of the Hebrews, invite young people, students, because he need to share his wisdom to them. He was a wealthy man and invite also wealthy people to listen his teaching. And the text that we have heard, it's part of one of his teaching. He was teaching about our liturgies, about their sacrifice, and he taught to that young people that they won't try to they wouldn't try to cheat God, preparing a wonderful sacrifice, very expensive, but the money that comes to that sacrifice comes from the oppressions of the poor. And teaching this idea about the justice, he points out that the prayer of the poor were always listened by God. And God always answered that prayers. That is the meaning of the first reading. If you see the second reading, the letter of Paul to Timothy, expressed the same idea. Paul was in jail. He was waiting for his death. He was condemned, and he said that when he was in the trial, he was alone because everybody abandoned him. But things were wrong for him, and so he was condemned. And in that situation, he also prayed to God, and he believed that God listened his prayer. And if you think in Jesus, it's the same, because Jesus also prayed at the cross, and according to the letter to the Hebrews, his prayer were listened by God. So this idea that the prayer of the weak, the prayer of the poor are always listened, and God answered that prayer in different ways, in ways that for us is difficult to understand, but God answered the prayer. So the Gospel of Luke also speak about a prayer. Luke wrote his gospel thinking in people that were not Hebrews, and they didn't know how to pray. And for this, in this gospel, Jesus prayed a lot, and also Jesus taught how to pray and what we must say in our prayers. The other gospel also introduce us Jesus as a man of prayer, but in this gospel, the prayer is more important. And so if you see these two men that went to the temple, both were very honest. They said true things about themselves. The Pharisee says that he is not greedy, dishonest, and also he paid taxes, and he said all the things that he said were true. And also the tax collector, but the tax collector said simply that he was a sinner. But there was a difference in those two prayers. The Pharisee thought that all his good work are enough to deserve be saved by God. All his good work are provoke that God must give him salvation. And so he's very proud about his good deed, his good works. And in this approach, he also compared himself with others. And of course, he beat others because he is good. The rest of the world are not so good, are bad. So in his approach, he haven't got room for God. He didn't realize that all the good works that he did are just grace of God acting in him. And for this situation, Jesus said that he is not, he will be not saved. He will not be justified by God. But in the other side, there's a sinner, a tax collector, a very, very bad guy in that society. He was a Hebrew that worked for the oppressors of the Hebrews, and he had the whole power of the Romans in his side, and he also, this kind of people had no limit to their desire of have money, so they can ask more money, and no one can put limit to their greed. So very, very bad image to the Hebrews. But Jesus put him as an example because he recognized that he was a bad guy, and he asked God for mercy. And for this situation, he he was justified. If you see in the same Gospel of Luke, you will see that beside Jesus at the cross, there were two thieves. One was a bad guy, and the other was a good thief. The good thief, the only thing that he said is, ask Jesus for salvation, ask Jesus for being mercy with him. And Jesus promised the paradise. So it's the same. This is a parable, and Jesus fulfilled this parable in his own life. So for us, this gospel is important because teach us that when we pray, we must check our own heart if we think that we are better than others or not.